The US-China trade war, reignited in 2025, has turned farmers into collateral damage in a clash of titans. President Trump's 145% tariffs on Chinese goods sparked China's retaliatory 125% duties on US imports, transforming global markets into a chessboard where farmers are pawns. This economic conflict is dismantling America's agricultural dominance, handing markets to rivals like Brazil and New Zealand. Like a storm tearing through a barn, tariffs are ripping apart rural livelihoods, leaving farmers with crops they can't sell and debts they can't pay. Tariffs are destroying America's farmers like never before. It's not naturates, policy killing their crops. And now, rivals are stealing markets for good. We'll explore how policy decisions are reshaping global agriculture, and whether the US can reclaim its place before the world learns to live without it. Tariffs just changed farming forever. They've locked US crops out of China. Instead, Brazil's signing the biggest deals in history. Imagine a farmer in Iowa, standing amid rows of soybeans ready for harvest, the air thick with the scent of earth and hope. But the trucks don't come. The buyers are gone. This is the grim reality of 2025, as tariffs strangle US agriculture in a trade war that spiraled out of control. The US slapped a 145% tariff on Chinese goods, a bold move to curb China's economic influence. China's response was a devastating counterstrike, a 125% tariff on all US imports, effectively locking American crops out of the world's largest market. According to the US Department of Agriculture, USDA, China purchased 60% of US soybean exports in 2017, but by 2024, that share collapsed to under 20%, costing farmers $12 billion annually. Soybean exports to China alone dropped 50% between 2018 and 2024, a loss that's not temporary but structural. This isn't a mere trade dispute. It's a geopolitical power struggle, a clash of national egos played out on a global stage. China isn't just retaliating, it's rewriting the rules of agricultural trade. Beijing has inked multi-year contracts with Brazil, whose soybean exports to China surged 6.7% in 2024 to 74 million metric tons, per Brazil's Ministry of Agriculture. Brazil's fields, once secondary to America's, are now China's breadbasket. The US, once the unchallenged king of global agriculture, is being outmaneuvered. It's like watching a chess grandmaster sacrifice pawns to protect the queen, only to realize the board has been flipped. The tension between Washington and Beijing is palpable, each tariff a jab in a boxing match where farmers take the blows. The pork industry is bleeding out. China's 170% tariff on US pork has obliterated a market that ranked among the top 3 export destinations, with exports down 60% since 2023, per the National Pork Producers Council. Hog farmers watch orders vanish, their barns echoing with the silence of lost contracts. Dairy is no safer. China's 125% tariffs have slashed exports of whey, lactose, and powdered milk by 40% as Europe and New Zealand step in. Wisconsin and Pennsylvania dairy producers, once reliant on China's 500 million annual market, are watching their livelihoods evaporate. Cotton and sorghum are on life support. Sorghum exports to China dropped 95% in 2024, and cotton prices fell 18%. Leaving Texas growers with stockpiles that grow like weeds. This isn't a market adjustment, it's an economic massacre. Tariffs from Beijing, Washington, and even Brussels are throttling American agriculture, pricing it out of global competition. The tension between nations is a tug of war, with farmers' livelihoods as the rope. Each tariff is a salvo, each lost market a wound, and the global stage is a battlefield where America's rural heartland is losing ground. Farmers are fighting to survive in a system that's turned against them, their fields a testament to resilience, but also to betrayal by policies that prioritize geopolitics over people. Rivals are stealing America's farm markets. Brazil's outshipping the US to China. Even India's beating America's prices. As US farmers stagger under tariff burdens, global competitors are sprinting to claim their markets. Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, and India are not just filling gaps, they're rewriting the global agricultural order. Brazil has become China's new darling, with soybean exports surging 30% in 2024 to 70 million metric tons, per Brazil's Ministry of Agriculture. Investments in export infrastructure, new inland ports, and doubled rail capacity have cut shipping costs by 15%, making Brazilian beans cheaper and faster to deliver. It's like watching a rival team steal your star player and build a better stadium while you're stuck in the locker room. Australia and New Zealand are equally aggressive. Updated trade pacts with Asia have boosted their dairy and meat exports by 20%, according to New Zealand's Ministry for Primary Industries. New Zealand's dairy exports to China alone grew 1.5 billion in 2024, filling the void left by US producers hit with 125% tariffs. India, a new player in the grain game, is offering rice and cotton at 10–15% below US prices, undercutting American growers in Africa and Southeast Asia. The International Grains Council reports that India's rice exports jumped 12% in 2024, a direct challenge to US dominance. These nations aren't just selling crops, they're securing empires with digital customs systems, export credit guarantees, and long-term contracts that scream reliability. The message to global buyers is unmistakable. You don't need the US anymore. America's agricultural dominance once rested on trust-reliable deliveries, stable prices, contracts honored without fail. But tariffs have broken that trust. Like a handshake betrayed mid-grip, US shipments face mid-contract disruptions, with prices spiking unpredictably, pushing buyers to rivals who offer stability. Brazil's new ports, Australia's trade deals, India's discounts, they're not just winning sales, they're locking in markets for decades. The trade war has turned global agriculture into a race, and America is falling behind. The tension between nations is a high-stakes poker game, and while the US bluffs with tariffs, its rivals are cashing in, leaving farmers to watch their legacy slip away like sand through a sieve. Farmers' lives are crumbling under tariffs. Suicides are soaring in rural America. Yet rivals are thriving on our losses. Beyond the spreadsheets and trade deals lies a human tragedy that cuts deeper than any statistic. American farmers are fighting a war they didn't start and can't win, their livelihoods crushed by forces beyond their control. The National Farmers Union reports that farm bankruptcies surged 20% in 2024, with rural banks bracing for a 30% increase in loan defaults, per the Federal Reserve. Equipment purchases are down 25%, and land rentals have collapsed by 15%, according to the USDA. These numbers paint a picture of rural America unraveling, like a quilt torn apart at the seams. The toll isn't just financial, it's personal. Mental health crises are spiking, with farmer suicide rates 1.5 times the national average, per the CDC. In North Dakota grain elevators, Minnesota dairy barns, and Georgia peanut fields, despair is as palpable as the dust in the air. The damage is generational, threatening the legacy of families who farmed for centuries. A Kansas sorghum grower called it economic extinction, a phrase that echoes across the Midwest. The institutions meant to protect farmers, the White House, Congress, the World Trade Organization, offer little more than press releases and promises. Past relief packages, mired in red tape, delayed aid to 60% of applicants, per a 2023 USDA audit, leaving farmers skeptical of new bailout plans. China's fighting back in the trade war. Trump's calls to Xi are being ignored. Instead, one man's steering China's comeback. As US farmers watch their markets vanish, China is recalibrating its strategy under the steady hand of Vice Premier He Lifeng, Xi Jinping's trusted economic lieutenant. The trade war's escalation has thrust He into the spotlight, not as a negotiator with Trump, but as China's architect of a new global trade order. While Trump urges Xi to pick up the phone for tariff talks, Beijing's response is clear. Any path to easing tensions runs through He, a longtime confidant overseeing the world's second-largest economy. This isn't just a policy shift, it's a power play to outlast US pressure. According to Reuters, he has been on the front line of China's outreach to Japan and the EU, signaling Beijing's intent to diversify trade partnerships while US farmers bear the brunt of 125% tariffs. He's no stranger to high stakes. With a PhD in economics from Xiamen University, he's navigating a learning curve compared to his predecessor, Liu He, a Harvard-educated economist who brokered a U.S. trade deal in Trump's first term. Yet, he's proving his mettle, impressing global CEOs at Beijing's recent business forum, where his focus was clear: secure China's economic resilience against U.S. tariffs. Reuters reports that China's 4.5% growth forecast for 2025, unchanged from last quarter, reflects confidence in He's strategy to pivot to alternative markets. Unlike the US, where farmers face $12 billion in annual soybean losses, China's redirecting its $400 billion export machine to Europe, Southeast Asia, and Africa, a move likened to a ship changing course mid-storm to avoid sinking. This pivot isn't without pain. Chinese producers face a rat race in new markets, sparking price wars that risk deflation, per the University of Cambridge's William Hurst. But his approach is strategic. Grant exemptions on some U.S. imports to ease domestic economic strain, as Reuters noted, while maintaining high tariffs on American crops like soybeans and pork. This selective softening shows Beijing's worry about trade war impacts, but also its resolve to hit back. The tension is a high-wire act. China's building bridges with the EU, eyeing tariff relief on French cognac, while U.S. farmers are left stranded. He's outreach to Paris for economic dialogue next month underscores this shift, like a chess player sacrificing a pawn to protect the king. For American farmers, this means permanent market loss, as China locks in Brazilian soybeans and New Zealand dairy, leaving rural America to choke on the dust of a trade war it can't win. Tariffs are shaking the global economy. Recession risks are skyrocketing, and America's farmers are paying the price. The US-China trade war isn't just a bilateral feud, it's a shockwave threatening to plunge the global economy into chaos. Economists warn that Trump's tariffs, including a 145% levy on China and a 10% blanket duty on all imports, are pushing the world toward recession. A Reuters poll of over 300 economists reveals that 60% see a high or very high risk of global recession in 2025, with 92% stating tariffs have damaged business sentiment. This isn't a distant threat, it's a guillotine hanging over American farmers, whose crops are priced out of markets as global trade contracts. The S&P 500 has plummeted 6.5% in 2025, and trillions in stock market value have vanished, signaling investor panic that hits rural America hardest. The numbers are grim. Three-quarters of economists cut their 2025 global growth forecast to 2.7% from 3%, below the IMF's 2.8% estimate, with 28 of 48 economies seeing downgraded projections. Mexico and Canada, key U.S. farm export markets, face sharp cuts to 0.2% and 1.2% growth, respectively, as tariffs disrupt trade. For farmers, this means fewer buyers even in neighboring markets, like a shopkeeper watching customers flee a sinking town. China's resilience, with a steady 4.5% growth forecast, underscores its ability to pivot, while U.S. agriculture faces $20 billion in potential export losses in 2025, per the USDA. The trade war's fallout is a spiral of uncertainty. James Rossiter of TD Securities notes that businesses can't plan a year down the road, let alone 5, as tariffs disrupt supply chains. Global investors are fleeing U.S. assets, with the dollar's safe haven status shaken, per Reuters, forcing farmers to compete in a shrinking, pricier market. It's like trying to sell crops in a storm-ravaged bazaar where buyers have vanished. The tension between nations is a global chess match, with farmers as pawns sacrificed for bigger plays. While China diversifies and rivals like Brazil thrive, American growers face bankruptcy and despair. Their fields a stark reminder that in this war, the heartland pays the ultimate price. Farmers don't want handouts, they want markets. Without exports, there's no income. Without income, there's no farm. The trade war's architects may see it as a geopolitical chess match, but for farmers, it's a life or death struggle. The tension between nations has turned rural America into a casualty ward, with global competitors like Brazil and India feasting on the markets America once owned. The National Farmers Union demands congressional oversight, while the American Farm Bureau pleads for negotiations with China. But time is running out. Every lost market is a door slammed shut, and the world is learning to feed itself without the U.S. The heartland's pain is a warning. Ignore the farmers, and you risk losing the soul of America itself.